Hello and welcome to the Americano Show. Today I am delighted to be joined by Peter McCormack, who is host of the Peter McCormack Show and also the chairman of the Real Bedford FC, I should say, which are a football team that you should follow with interest, I think. And we're going to be talking today about crypto because I was in Washington this week for the inauguration. And it struck me what a powerful presence cryptocurrency and Bitcoin are now in the Trump universe and now, of course, in the American federal government. Peter, I think I've read quite a few pieces about this. Usually they're quite alarmist, suggesting crypto has taken over America and so on. But I couldn't help thinking maybe that is right. Crypto, to some extent, has taken a big hold in American power.
Well, it's definitely a significant voting bloc now. Bitcoin has been growing for the last 16 years, ever since Satoshi released the protocol. And every 4 years, it seems to get this significant boost as we go into what we call a bull run. But the voting bloc is quite big, and the voting bloc has significant amounts of money behind it. We know money certainly plays an influence in US politics, but also more influential people have been getting into Bitcoin. We had BlackRock launch their ETF alongside other institutions. So it really feels like it's Bitcoin's time right now. I'm much more focused on Bitcoin, happy to answer questions on that than broad crypto, but it feels like it's time. And under the Trump administration, I think what they've realized is that with Bitcoin being decentralized, you can try and block it, but it's kind of like putting your hands up against water. It will find a way around it because it exists everywhere all the time. And so rather than pushing it into other jurisdictions, innovation abroad, or scaring off developers, I think Trump has realized that this is a unique piece of innovation. And if Bitcoin is going to continue to grow, they probably want to have the best companies and best people in America.
Are you what's known as a Bitcoin maximalist? And if you are, or even if you aren't, please explain what that is.
Very, very close to a Bitcoin maximalist. Bitcoin's the only cryptocurrency which I hold as an asset. A Bitcoin maximalist is somebody who, in the world of cryptocurrencies, of which there are thousands, from Bitcoin to other similar coins such as Litecoin, you have other protocols such as Ethereum and Solana, and then this big world of meme coins. A Bitcoin maximalist is somebody who says Bitcoin is the only cryptocurrency that matters. It's the only one that's meaningfully decentralized. It's the only one that can meaningfully take power away from the state. It's the only cryptocurrency which offers real long-term value. We have a more derogatory term for the other ones, but I wouldn't say I'm entirely a Bitcoin maximalist in that on the other protocols we have seen further development, a more advanced development of dollar stable coins. And having traveled around the world, being to places like Argentina and Venezuela, I've seen the power of having a digital dollar on a kind of decentralized network, a less decentralized network than Bitcoin. So I've seen the benefit it's brought to society. I know it's been used in Gaza by Palestinians. And so all around the world, people who don't have access to a dollar, but in high inflation environments, do have access to this dollar stable coin to protect their wealth. So whilst I'm a Bitcoin maximalist in terms of myself, I empathize with the need for these dollar stablecoins.
Well, tell us a bit about David Sachs then, because as I understand it, the sort of Bitcoin purists, the people a bit more like yourself, are a bit concerned about him because he seems very interested in Solana, maybe even has quite a lot of Solana himself, and he is now Trump's crypto czar. There's quite a lot of concern about that, isn't there, within the Bitcoin community?
Yeah, concern, kinda, disappointment more, in that it's a weird one. As a Bitcoin maximalist, you want the US government to focus on Bitcoin because that's the cryptocurrency that can make a real difference to the economy and people's lives. But with someone like David Sachs, he is an investor. And so I think he's less of a purist around cryptocurrencies. He's probably interested in where he can make some money. And unfortunately, on their show, there was an unfortunate moment where they talked about buying Solana and dumping it on people and laughing about it. It was kind of gross, but it also kind of made everyone realize that he wouldn't be the ideal candidate for a Bitcoiner to be that person. Personally, I would have gone with Pierre Rochard, a long-term Bitcoiner responsible for some of the most important education in the space. And, he's got very clear principles on why Bitcoin is the cryptocurrency that matters. At the same time, if there is a crypto czar and he is focusing on a broad set of cryptocurrencies, it does mean that Bitcoin itself is protected from the situation we had under the Biden administration, which was constant regulatory attacks, the SEC constantly declining ETFs to the point they actually had to get sued for an ETF to be allowed. So whilst it's disappointing, I would rather they focus on Bitcoin. If they are going broad crypto, it does offer a lot more protection for Bitcoin companies, Bitcoin holders, and the Bitcoin industry. But yeah, Dave Sachs is a disappointing choice.
Is the debate then about utility? But as it always seems to be with cryptocurrency, which cryptocurrency is most useful, which cryptocurrency has the right protocol, whatever you call it, to be used a lot in the real world as a currency for practical purposes. The criticism of Bitcoin is that it is obviously the most valuable, it is the breakthrough technology, it is the most held of the currencies. But I believe the criticism is that it doesn't have the utility of Ethereum or Solana.
If you enjoy what we do here at Spectator TV, then why not subscribe to the magazine as well? If you subscribe today, you'll get 12 weeks for just £12, plus a free £20 John Lewis and Waitrose gift card. You can sign up at spectator.co.uk/TV offer.
Yeah, so that's a misleading point. I think the debate should be around decentralization. The power of a blockchain, the design of a blockchain, which Satoshi came up with, was for decentralization. If you're going to create a cryptocurrency that is outside of control of the state, that can't be turned off, if you want to take power back and give it to the electorate, then you need something that is maximally decentralized, which the trajectory is always to more decentralization. And so Bitcoin is the only one that's meaningfully decentralized. If you become centralized, you aren't benefiting from what blockchain offers, which is the ability to distribute an entire copy of the ledger globally to everybody who runs the Bitcoin software. And so the debate to me starts with decentralization, which is the most meaningfully decentralized. That is Bitcoin. Now, look, there are other key points. Bitcoin's monetary policy has almost not changed since day one. It is an issuance of maximum 21 million Bitcoin. The issuance rate is a halves every 4 years. And that's never really changed. Whereas other cryptocurrencies, Solana or Ethereum, I'm not sure on Solana. I know Ethereum has changed its monetary policy sometimes. I also know Solana has just collapsed and fallen down sometimes. They might offer some form of utility, but the most important utility is protection of wealth. And Bitcoin does that the best of any of these cryptocurrencies. And so to me, there really isn't a debate. Bitcoin is the most decentralized. It's the only one that's meaningfully decentralized. And it's the only one where its trajectory is to more decentralization. So I don't think there's any debate anymore. Bitcoin won this race.
Well, I see that point. But it seems to me that the Trump administration or people within Trump world are very interested in creating these, let's call them SH coins. Because you had the Trump coin that came out last weekend, I think it was. There's a Melania coin. And a lot of people see an opportunity to get very, very rich quickly or to make a very quick killing from these coins. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, and it's disappointing. The temptation's there. I own a football club. I could very easily do Rail Bedford coin. I could hold the majority of the coins myself, distribute a small amount, and then start unloading on retail. But history will tell you all these cryptocurrencies valued against Bitcoin, always their trajectory is towards zero. Over the long enough time scale, they all fail. Many have already failed. We've seen it again and again and again. But look, the temptation's there. I mean, Hoktua Girl, she did a coin. So many people have done coins, but it's more similar to going. Look, the way I've always explained it as a Bitcoiner, it's like being in Vegas in a board meeting with a chart up on the wall with a glass room, and you're seeing everyone out in Vegas having fun. They're all out there gambling and having fun, and we're sitting there down there doing the hard work. But the majority of the people, when they leave Vegas, they will leave poorer because it's designed for the house to win. Meme coins, the other cryptocurrencies, they're really designed for the house to win, and most people lose money. So yes, there are opportunities. I think it was disappointing that Trump did this. I think it's disappointing when most people launch these cryptocurrencies. Even if they do so in good faith, it only takes a small amount of research to find out that they're on a long enough time frame, utterly worthless. But also, it's a reflection on the people that surround them. If Trump was only surrounded by the likes of Pierre Rochard, David Bailey, these people would have focused entirely on Bitcoin. But with David Sachs and unfortunately Brad Garlinghouse from Ripple Labs, which is a kind of like the worst of the cryptocurrencies, which has zero utility, all it's ever done is survive by selling onto retail. It has no use, and they've actually campaigned and worked against Bitcoin. I believe they funded Greenpeace with the misinformation against Bitcoin. They've tried to have the code changed. They've tried to have the consensus changed. It's actually quite evil, the things they've done. But sadly, these people, they get around the Trump administration. Perhaps they've bought their way into that influence, but now they're influencing decisions on people. Look, Trump's an interesting guy, but he's not going to have gone down the rabbit hole like the likes of myself, Pierre Rochard, have gone down. So it'd be very difficult for him to fully understand the difference. And if he has the wrong people around him, I think they'll make some missteps.
Well, and it's not just Trump. It's still probably the majority of people who haven't gone down that rabbit hole. And if you see Bitcoin or decentralized finance as the future, there has to be some sort of transition towards that. And that will involve an enormous amount of political upheaval, and probably far more than the Trump administration will be willing to take on.
That transition's already been happening for 16 years, and it's slow, and rightfully it's slow. Bitcoin is very disruptive. The mechanisms of Bitcoin are very different from the fiat rails. It's very disruptive. And so a slow transition is probably a good thing. It takes time for the technology to build, for people to understand the technology, to understand the influence. But there is a transition of money which is leaving the fiat system and going into the Bitcoin system. It's a transfer of wealth. It's a transfer of power. But do I believe that Bitcoin will be the only currency that exists in a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades? No, I think it'd be very hard for us to get away from sovereign currencies. But what we will see is a transition of value which departs from these currencies. And it will reflect the economic policies of countries. If they continue to print money or borrow increasing amounts of money and drive inflation, people are going to look for a place to park their cash. Historically, people with money, knowing they're not getting interest rates, moved it into assets or commodities. Bitcoin is one of these. To some people, it is an asset. To some people, it's a commodity. But it's a place to park your money and avoid the terrible impact of inflation, which we will continue to get, because it's almost mathematically impossible now for these countries, the US, UK, Europe, to not continue increasing their debt.
Well, and to some extent, as I understand it, Bitcoin's rise is an expression of a lack of faith in central banking. And every time there is a financial crisis now, central banks come to the fore. You have government stimuli, and that stabilizes the financial system. It's not a very healthy system, but it does stop financial crises from getting completely out of hand. I suppose is your answer that if you have Bitcoin, you will have fewer financial crises. But there's a counterpoint to that, which is that a pure economy like Bitcoin might be would be quite a brutal place for a lot of people.
But the current economy is a very brutal place for a lot of people. If you're in the poorest in society, the lower class, the lower middle class, even the middle class, you've had your disposable income eviscerated. You've had your businesses destroyed by policies which have seen massive inflation. And that's us experiencing this in relatively stable Western liberal democracies. If you go to the developing world, well, the US has exported their inflation to these countries. I mean, I was in Malawi earlier this year, and they just had something like a 50% currency reduction in value of their currency. And we've seen this all around the world. The US hasn't always managed its position as having the global reserve currency within the best interest of everyone else. It's within the best interest of those. But it is the currency used to trade everything around the world. And so the world is a tough, hard place for people who are using the dollar or experiencing the export of its inflation. The world has got an easier and better place for those who have been holding Bitcoin wherever they are in the world. And so, look, they're just two different worlds. And what we don't know, I mean, we can guess and pull together some kind of thesis on what we believe the future of the world is under these two currencies. What I hope is that Bitcoin spreads and expands enough that reduces the size of the state and enforces more kind of fiscal and monetary responsibility from governments, because otherwise people will exit those currencies. But it's very hard for us to know what the future is, because this is still a fairly new currency. We're still learning what it is, what it does, how it works.
Well, I think politically, Bitcoin is very associated with libertarianism, and there certainly seems to be a crypto-enhanced libertarian faction within the Trump administration. But Ross Ulbricht being released would be perhaps Trump sort of answering their concerns to some extent. But the Trump movement itself is not altogether libertarian, is it?
No, I mean, it's a traditional Republican conservative administration with some nuances. I mean, I think we'll be talking about Trumpism because it's his own version of republicanism. Bitcoin is often aligned with libertarians. James O'Brien this week said it's right wing. I think he aligned it with far right, the far right movement. Look, people can categorize where it is. It is money. That's what Bitcoin is. It's a form of money. It's a free market form of money. It's an open monetary network that anyone in the world can tap into and use, and they know the rules. They know there isn't a group of people within a central bank, the Fed or the BOE, who are making decisions which they think will stabilize an economy that ultimately wreck the lives of certain people. It is an open, free market monetary system that anyone can use. And the interesting part of this with Trump is that I think Trump is pro-trade. I think Trump is pro lower taxation, and I think Trump is pro-conservative values. We've been through a period of liberalism. We've been through a period of left parties leading certain countries, and it's not been popular. The Biden administration was very unpopular. The Labour government in the UK is very unpopular. I think we've got to that point where people want something different, and Trump democratically offers something different.
Well, Peter McCormack, thank you very much for coming to Americano. It's been fascinating to hear your insights.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.